So I'm going to explain what Mackey's moral error theory is and tell you why it doesn't work. Okay, so Mackey says that when people say murder is wrong, for example, they actually do suppose cognitivism, meaning that they do believe that they're expressing a cognitivist claim, a truth-apt claim, meaning that it is what they actually believe. It reflects their belief system. It's not just a mere preference. He believes that, which is really strange because he's he actually argues for relativism. So how does he get from saying that moral expressions are truth-apt to moral relativism? So how he does that is through his argument of moral error theory. He says that when people claim things like murder is wrong, they're expressing cognitivism, but their expression doesn't reflect the reality. So he concludes that never their claims will be connected or linked to reality, cognate to reality. So in simpler terms, when we make moral claims, we can never find whether it's true or not. He he argues that it can't be known if you look at reality. So it doesn't link to reality. It's just we really believe that we're expressing moral truth-apt claims, and we do hold those beliefs, but it does not reflect reality. So that his moral error theory concludes that moral propositions are always wrong. They always make the error. And he gives an example, and his example for substantiating his moral error theory is the argument from cultural relativism. And his cultural relativism is the idea that different cultures have different cultural beliefs, and he emphasizes that things like science have been able to progress throughout time, but still people argue about what is the right way to act, and that it seems like we haven't been able to find the right answers. So this is the summary of his evidence for moral error theory, that moral expressions, they believe, don't reflect reality, because if they did, we would be able to find the answer in the same way we find the answer with science, because when a scientist says something like a scientific theory, it tends to be able to link or cognate to reality. And why it tends to do that is because we can actually validate those claims, whereas with morality we can't validate those claims. So his evidence for moral error theory is cultural relativism. But one way to criticize cultural relativism, which I think is a valid way of criticizing, is that actually there have been moral progress. We have been able to get rid of slavery, sexism, and things like that. And it seems intuitive to us now that those things are moral progress. So another way to criticize Mackey's moral error theory would be from James Rachel. So I'm going to write that down. James Rachel. I think I spelled it right. If I haven't, probably there's an E, I think, in it. James. I think it's something like that. It doesn't matter if I haven't spelled it wrong. I think I probably have spelled it wrong, haven't I? How do you spell it?
You had it right the first time.
Huh?
You had it right the first time, I think.
Rachel. R-A-C-H-E-L. R-A-C-H-E-L.
R-A-C-H-E-L, yeah?
Yeah.
So James Rachel, he criticizes Mackey's argument, saying that actually people do share the same value system. So I'm going to write that down. Value system. And he distinguishes what is a value system with what is a belief system. So he says that most people have the same value system, but that our belief systems are different. Hence why we feel like, or it seems to us, that value systems are different. So he gives the example of, for example, Eskimos. That Eskimos tend to, sometimes when they're in extreme conditions, they kill their children in order to help the family survive. But that's exactly the point. The point is that their value system is the same in a sense that they respect human life. So the respect for human life as a value It's the same as the value we have in the West, which is respect human life. But their belief system is constrained for the fact that they're in those extreme conditions, right? So because they're in extreme conditions, because they have to feed their families, and because it's hard to sustain a large family, they have to kill one of their newborn children every now and then in order to save the family. So that they have a reason for that. They don't have a different value system. They're actually trying to respect human life, and they're greater good for the family by killing that person. So they don't actually have a different value system. Rather, the belief system or the method of achieving those value systems is different. He gives another example of people in the Muslim countries, like people who commit honor killing. And he says that it's rather different than the Eskimos, but it follows the same logic that those people have a reason for killing their daughters. Obviously, the reasons aren't justified because they believe that when their daughters commits, for example, commits adultery, that brings shame to the family, and that because it brings shame to the family, it's the right thing to kill their daughters. Obviously, it's wrong, but the thing is, their belief system is different. Their belief system is different because they believe if they kill their daughter, that's the right thing to do. But the value system, they're still trying to do the right thing, right? And this is James Retro's criticism that cultures aren't actually that different. That we might have different belief systems, or we might go on about solving those problems differently with applying different methods, but it doesn't mean that our value system is different. So James Retro concludes that value systems are very similar, and the only way to criticize James Retro would be psychopaths, because psychopaths do not really want to do the right thing. Perhaps you could give the argument, but for the most, for the majority of human history and most of human societies, that tends to work. So cultural relativism fails on that basis. The second theory that is non-cognitive or relativistic is emotivism. And emotivism has a lot of problems. One is that it can't allow the notion of moral progress, because our expressions of moral beliefs are just mere preferences or mere desires. And obviously, if you're only expressing your emotions, your desires, there's no such a thing as a right answer. It's just your desire. And the philosopher who argues that is A.J. Ayer, who says that ethical propositions and ethical beliefs are reducible to mere expressions of your beliefs, of your preferences or your tastes. Let me see what other problems there are. Another big problem is that it's actually counterintuitive, and it seems obvious to us that they have the burden of proof, meaning that they have to provide enough evidence to show why their emotivist case is true, because it seems intuitive to us that when we argue about morality, we assume moral cognitivism, meaning that there is a right or wrong answer, and also that we really believe that when we say maybe it is wrong, we actually mean it is wrong. So it's counterintuitive. And another one is a criticism by Immanuel Kant, who says that reason has a role to play in our moral reasoning, in our moral disagreements or agreements, that we give reasons for our beliefs, and so that seems like they're not mere preferences, but more like they are thought through expressions of our beliefs. And so these two reasons or three reasons are why emotivism fails. But I don't have any space here, but I'm going to say what's the biggest problem, I think, or one of the biggest problems for non-cognitivism in general, or relativism. And this links to the linguistic part of non-cognitivism, relativism. And I'm going to just write it down. This is a problem known as the Frege-Geach problem. It's not an easy thing to explain, but I'm going to try to explain it as easy as I can, the easiest as I can. The Frege-Geach problem is a problem that when someone says, for example, that murder is wrong, I have to write that down actually, because I think it makes more sense. So person A says murder is wrong. if person A says murder is wrong, a non-cognitivist would say that this expression is an expression of mere preference, right? That it's not a truth apt statement, so it can't be true or false. But the thing is, if you give a conditional, if you say, if murder is wrong, then Luca was wrong to murder, for example. The problem comes here is that there are certain logical arguments called modus ponens. I can write it down. Modus ponens. Which is exactly what I laid out here, is that when you give a conditional, it must logically follow that if murder is wrong, then Luca was wrong to murder. But the non-cognitivists fail to account for that. They take the first meaning of murder as non-cognitive, but the second as cognitive, because it must be cognitive logically. And I'll explain why. This is a logical proposition. If murder is wrong, then Luca was wrong to murder. And it seems to follow, the second premise seems to follow from the first. And the non-cognitive think murder is wrong is a non-cognitive claim that when you say murder is wrong, you just believe it's your preference. But they can't say then Luca was wrong to murder is a non-cognitive claim, because it just doesn't follow. It's the logical form of the sentence imposes that on a sentence, so that it must be cognitive, because the premise, the conclusion seems to follow from the premises, so that they commit the equivocation fallacy. So equivocation fallacy, and the equivocation fallacy is when you use a meaning, when you use a word and you imply two meanings in two different contexts. So in the first, they implying non-cognitivism, that murder is wrong, it's just your preference, and the second, they assume cognitivism, that murder is wrong must be something that is true or false, because the statement imposes truth apt conclusion for murder is wrong. And so equivocation fallacy is that the non-cognitivists are forced to accept that the second is a cognitivist claim and the first is a non-cognitivist claim, and therefore they're using the meaning of murder in two different ways, which comes in equivocation fallacy. And this applies to all different non-cognitivist claims, including emotivism, prescriptivism, and the rest of the cognitivist claim that non-cognitivist claim that you have come across. And it's essentially a criticism to the language side of relativism, like emotivism, not to the ontology of ethics. So I've rejected fully moral relativism and moral non-cognitivism. We're going to move to more objectivism now. I'm going to...
Alex, can I just suggest, because you're at 15 minutes now, that if you're going to upload this to YouTube, do a separate video, because no one's going to watch like a 40-minute video.
Yeah, sure.